Hey, Fidelity, how can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Freedom, aliveness, wholeness, completion aren't out there from someone else or something else. They are all within you. These are the three main things that I believe that we are after. So when we can name them, that's why I wanted to make this podcast episode. When we can name them, we can talk about them out in the open, you have a bit more of a North Star. These are inner journeys. No one can do them for you. These are choices that you make every day. These are explorations that you make every day. Observations, behaviors, beliefs, thoughts every day. You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 667. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. We are on lesson 7 of my 10 episode series that I'm calling Coming Home to Yourself, that are 10 major life lessons that I have learned as I approach my 50th birthday. It's still sort of weird for me to say that out loud because I still feel 29. I still feel 29. In fact, did I tell you, I've told you this, my roller derby number was 29 because when it was time for me to pick a number, I was like, do I have a lucky number? I don't really have a lucky number, but maybe I'll just choose 29 because I feel 29. At the time I was in my late 30s and it has just stuck with me. So I still feel 29. So to say I'm turning 50 is wild. And the good news is that I've had enough experience, and based on what I do for a living, I have learned and integrated some really great life lessons. And so I'm bringing them to you in no particular order. I'm running with them intuitively. There's only been a couple of them that have been planned out a few weeks ahead of time. Normally, I'm just sort of asking the universe, my guides, my source, what is the lesson that is needed to be heard to my podcast audience? And so we're at another one. This one is what I'm calling the 3 things we're all searching for: freedom, feeling alive, and wholeness. I could have done a whole list, but the rest of the things that I would have listed sort of fall underneath the umbrella of these 3 things. So I've kept it to the short list of 3 things: freedom, feeling alive, and wholeness. And so I'm going to get into more detail on what each of those 3 are, what they look like, how we block ourselves, and how to be open to get more of those things in your life in just a minute here. And I wanted to remind you that coming up very soon, I'm going to be opening up registration for the first ever group coaching program, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, that is based on my best-selling book that has been translated into 20 languages, that has been available in, I think, 23 countries around the world, which still surprises me. And I'm just honored that my work has traveled around the world like that. And that will open up in a few weeks. But if you get on the list, the interest list, AndreaOwen.com/habits, you will be first to be notified, so you won't miss it, as well as you will be available to take advantage of the bonuses that I'm going to have, as well as a price discount. So get on that. If you're just going to hear about it on the podcast, or if you're on my regular newsletter list, or you follow me on Instagram, then it'll be, you won't get the bonuses, and you won't get the special price break. So AndreaOwen.com/habits. And also next week, I'm going to be talking about a one-on-one program that I'm also very excited to facilitate for some of you who might be ready for that. That is based on all of these 10 life lessons. So there'll be an application available for that. So stay tuned. All right, let's get into it. So why does this topic matter? I wanted to do an episode that touched on the deeper longing underneath most everything that we do. And again, it touches on the entire coming home to yourself, using air quotes over here, the coming home to yourself perspective. This is not about searching outside of ourselves for something. This is about reclaiming, about returning to sort of our factory settings, about what it means to be a human. And it's my opinion, my professional and personal opinion, that freedom, feeling alive, and wholeness, what I'll also go back and forth to calling completion, it's also known as wholeness. Those three things are at the core of what we all want, what we're all ultimately after. And you might describe it a little bit different. That's why I also call wholeness completion, because I had heard in the past people talking about wholeness, and even Brene Brown talks about living a wholehearted life. I was like, okay, like I felt like I mostly got it. And I believe it was Dr. Joe Dispenza said the word completion, and then he said the word wholeness. And I was like, oh, those are interchangeable. Those mean the same thing, because I resonate so much more with the word completion. So as I'm describing these three things, you might come up with a better word for what each of those are. And that really does matter when you find a word that resonates a little bit more for you. So let's kick it off with freedom. What freedom really is. So I'm just gonna riff on the description. Freedom is the ability to be fully yourself, your authentic self, if you will. This is free from external expectations. This is free from any social or cultural conditioning that you may have grown up with. This is being free from any shame that you might have so that you can show up as your full self. Freedom is also emotional freedom. Like let's get into the nitty-gritty. It is also emotional freedom. So this is being able to feel your feelings without numbing, feeling safe enough to feel your feelings without numbing. It is letting go of the emotional impact of the past. Because when we heal from trauma, it's not about forgetting about what happened. To me, it's not even about forgiving other people for hurting you. Real emotional freedom is letting go of the impact, the charge, if you will, that the memories, that the trauma can still carry, learning to let go of that weight. Freedom is also freedom of choice, living in alignment with your values, being able to make decisions and follow through with things and get what you want based on what is important to you personally. Freedom is living in alignment with your values versus fear-based choices or being forced to make a choice. That's the difference. And when we're talking about freedom in relationships, it is, again, going back to that feeling safe enough to be your full self, bringing all versions of you, not just one dimension. That's how when I explain the times that I've been in a romantic relationship where I felt like I wasn't safe enough to be my whole self. The way I describe it is my partner, I felt like my partner only liked one dimension of me. They liked the happy, cheerful, optimistic, enthusiastic, efficient, productive side of me. But then when it came to my messier side, my anxious side, my shadow side, not so much. So in your relationships, it is the freedom to be your full self so that you can connect with others. The feeling of the openness of connection can make you feel free. Freedom is also knowing, because these are knowing and expressing what you want and what you need. So there's the knowing part. I would be remiss if I said freedom is the feeling of being able to express what you want and need. We need to take a few steps back, because I have talked to plenty of women. I have had plenty of coaching clients when I ask them, what is it that you really want? What is it that you really need? They don't know, because they've spent so long having that not be a priority in their life. They've spent so long having to decide that and carry through taking care of the wants and needs of other people. They don't know their own. And so freedom is first and foremost knowing, feeling emotionally safe enough to be able to express it comes next. So freedom is knowing and having the safety to be able to express what you both want and need. Freedom is actively working on surrender, working on surrendering. And that is, I believe, is the second lesson in this series. I talked for like an hour on surrender and what that looks like. Freedom is also working on, and I notice I'm being very careful with the way I articulate these. So actively working on surrender. So freedom isn't necessarily surrendering, living a life where you are surrendering, because Lord knows I don't do it all the time. It is a work in progress. Maybe I should start using that term. So a million years ago, when I had my first corporate job, it was like my first office job. I was 22 years old. Maybe this is a thing in corporate when there are orders and things like that. But I worked for a chain of surf shops, and I was on the phone a lot with the reps. And one of them was, if you're familiar with the brand, the surfing, snowboarding brand, Quicksilver. I worked with the Roxy division, which is the girls and women's division. And there was a rep, and her name was Sunshine. Like, how surf industry is that? Her name was Sunshine, and she was my age. We were both very young. And I would talk to her almost every day. And she would go through these orders, and she would say, okay, those bathing suits are in WIP. And so WIP meant WIP, work in progress, meant that it was somewhere in the progress. I don't even remember. It was so long ago, but that stuck with me. WIP. It's an acronym for work in progress. So maybe I'll start calling that. Surrender is in WIP in our lives. I'm assuming all the time. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to a place in my evolution where surrender is the default most of the time. So that's why I'm very careful when I say actively working on surrender is freedom. Actively working on detachment. So detachment is slightly different from surrender in that detachment is where you work on being unattached to particular outcomes. And let me specify. So you can still actively want what you want, but you are detached from the outcome making or breaking you. My friend Rachel Luna says, if not this, then something better. So it's knowing that if you don't end up getting what you want, that you trust your own resilience, you trust that there is still something good out there for you. You trust that maybe it's a life lesson. You trust that basically you're not making the outcome mean something about your worth, mean something about your entire future, mean something about how your entire emotional stability needs to be. So that's what detachment looks like. There is freedom in detachment too. And that is another hard one. Detachment for me, it feels as difficult as surrender a lot of times. And the last thing is in my description of what freedom is also actively working on self-trust, which is directly related to surrender and detachment. It's kind of a little trifecta there. Surrender, detachment, and self-trust. Because when you trust yourself, it is so much easier to feel free. When you know that no matter what happens, you are your own safety net. You are free. When you know that you do not have to rely on someone else's love, on someone else's validation, on someone else's attention, someone else's anything, you are free because we cannot control other people. God damn it. I know. I want to too. All right. How we block ourselves from freedom. Guess what? People pleasing. People pleasing, the fear of disappointing others, looking for validation from others. That's how we block ourselves from freedom. Perfectionism, blocking ourselves from freedom. The illusion that we need permission from others to step into our full, authentic self. We are blocking ourselves from freedom. When we are staying stuck in our history, in our old stories, when we're not working on creating new ones, when we're not open to endless possibilities, I tell Dr. Fox from the beginning, I told him, I believe in impossible things. I believe in impossible things. It's become a little bit of a mantra in our relationship. I decided to make that a mantra for myself because that is freedom. Believing in impossible things is freedom for me. If I'm staying stuck in old stories that have never worked for me in the past, but my brain likes them because they're familiar and predictable, I am not free. We are blocking ourselves from freedom when we are not healing old traumas. That's a hard one because facing old trauma, healing from old trauma takes certain resources. It takes a certain amount of safety, and it is a privilege to have those things. All right, so the good news, how to be open to freedom. How do we do this? Oh, and by the way, again, per usual, worksheet for this, free downloadable worksheet so you can work through these as I talk about them or when you're done listening to it. AndreaOwen.com/667. AndreaOwen.com/667. The link to grab it is also in the show notes. So you can do the work, so you can integrate, so you can figure out what all of these look like in your life. So how to be open to freedom. Get radically honest with yourself and ask yourself, where do I feel not free? Where do I feel caged? Where do I feel like my wings have been clipped? That's how I used to describe a former relationship. I even had a tarot reader who's local here in Greensboro. Her name's Sky Bradshaw. She's amazing. I'll put her link in the show notes. I had a reading and I was flummoxed. She said she's looking at the cards and she knew nothing about me. I also made sure that she did not know before the appointment. She did not know my last name. She could not look me up, nothing. And she said, the cards are showing that you've been eclipsed in a relationship. And I was like, oh, look at that. That to me is not free. If you feel like you've been eclipsed by someone or something. So finding out, getting really honest with yourself, what that is and where you can make changes. That's being open to having more freedom in your life. And this is about starting small for a lot of you. I love a radical jump. I love a big goal. I love cannonballing into whatever is next for you. But also, you can start small. You can practice tiny moments of authenticity. Having an uncomfortable conversation with someone about something you want to talk about or something you want to do. Starting small might be small moments of self-trust. Even just journaling on these topics. Asking yourself these questions is a direct route to being open to more freedom. Tiny moments of surrender. Going back to listen to that episode on surrender. There was a lot of information in there. You may need to listen to it more than once. I know for me, anytime there's a podcast episode that I listen to or an audiobook that is resonating a lot, meaning like, oh, my soul is interested in this, not just my brain. My soul is interested in this. I need to listen to it more than once. So maybe that is a small step for you to being open to freedom, is these small moments of surrender, the small moments of detachment, learning and implementing new mantras for yourself. Like the one I just mentioned, if not this, then something better. Those all matter. They all move the needle in a positive direction. Being open to more freedom also can look like questioning the rules that you've been following, even asking yourself, who made these rules? that I have unconsciously been following? Who made them? Do they serve me or do they serve other people? Those kinds of questions. And one of my favorite questions, and this is a question that I posed in the introduction of my book that came out in 2021, Make Some Noise. Ask yourself, this is also a great question to ask yourself if you are hesitating anywhere, if you're hesitating to make a decision, if you're hesitating to speak up, if you're hesitating to do something that's making you uncomfortable, if you're hesitating to step out of your comfort zone, ask yourself, what is my conditioning versus what is my truth? What is my cultural or societal conditioning or my family of origin conditioning versus what is my soul's truth? What is my intuition saying? What is the wisest, most natural part of me saying? What is that truth? All right, we're going to take a quick ad break. And when we get back, I am going to walk you through wholeness or completion. Let's talk about perimenopause and menopause. If you've been feeling like your body's betraying you, you're not alone and you don't have to suffer through it. That's where MIDI Health comes in. MIDI connects you with expert clinicians who actually understand women's midlife health. There's no guesswork, no dismissing your symptoms, just real science-backed solutions to help you feel like yourself again. They treat things like hot flashes and night sweats, trouble sleeping, painful sex, vaginal dryness and libido changes, weight and body changes, brain fog and memory lapses, moodiness, anxiety and depression, period problems, hair and skin changes, and more. Booking a virtual visit is fast and easy. There are no membership fees, no hidden costs, just specialized care covered by major insurance providers. And if you're out of network or uninsured, there are affordable cash options too. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. I want to take a minute to talk about something I've struggled with, my relationship with food and my body. In my 20s, I battled an eating disorder for years, and finding the right treatment was frustrating. One of the biggest barriers was that insurance wouldn't cover it just because I was still having my period. I had to navigate so much of it on my own, and I don't want that for anyone else. Eating disorders are so common, yet we don't talk about them enough. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to Equip, a virtual evidence-based eating disorder treatment program that helps you recover at home. No putting your life on hold, whether it's work, family, or the things that bring you joy. Equip gives you a full care team, a therapist, dietitian, medical provider, and even a mentor who's been through recovery. They treat people of all ages, all types of eating disorders, and best of all, is covered by insurance and has no wait list. If you or someone you love is struggling, don't wait. You deserve help. Get a free consultation with Equip today because healing is possible and you don't have to do it alone. Visit equip.health/noise to learn more about Equip's virtual accessible eating disorder treatment. That's equip.health/noise.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, we're back. Let's move into feeling alive. Feeling alive. What is feeling alive, really? I'm not talking about just being happy. Like, yeah, that's the goal for many of us. Who doesn't want to be happy? But I'm not talking just about happy, but I'm talking about deeply engaged in your life. When you feel like your life has meaning, when you feel like that, just sucking the marrow out of life, that. When you feel like your life has purpose, when you feel like your life has passion, when you're engaged in full body yes moments, when you are connected to wonder and play and you can lean into curiosity, when you are connected to awe, AWE, is what I'm trying to say. When you've had those moments where, have you ever paused when you're having like a belly laughs with a really great friend, or you are with your partner and you pause for a moment and you feel that overwhelming feeling of love, or you're with your child and you have that, you look at them and have that just wash of, I can't believe how lucky I am to experience this, this moment. Or like these moments of Mother Nature, like just the great artist that she is, whether it's a sunrise or a sunset or a storm or a snowfall or anything. Those are the moments of really feeling alive. You can call it bliss or joy, but it's sort of a mix of all of those things. That's how I describe it. So it's also the balance of joy and presence. Presence is also a part of feeling alive, and it's vulnerable. Feeling alive is vulnerable because we all know that we've had those moments of joy, and we also know what it feels like to have it taken away. We know what it feels like to have the other shoe drop. And so these moments of feeling alive can feel really vulnerable. Feeling alive is also listening to our intuition, because we are touching our soul when that happens. When we feel alive, our soul is lit up and we are in touch with our intuition, that sixth sense. And how we numb and shut down our aliveness, Lord, I know this place. When we're stuck in survival mode, when we are going through the motions, I think we've all been there. Maybe some of you are there right now. And I also think that this is normal. I also think that it's an incredibly difficult task to do, to feel in that aliveness place 100% of the time. But that's not what I'm asking here. It's not, I'm not asking for 100% of the time. So we numb it or shut down our aliveness when we're stuck in survival mode, when we're going through the motions, when we have poor boundaries. It becomes one of those places where we're letting circumstances, other people dictate how we're feeling. And so it can snuff out that aliveness. We shut down our aliveness when we start numbing out with overworking, scrolling, distractions. And I understand, like, it is rough out there right now with what's happening here in the States and beyond. And so reaching for distractions like scrolling, overworking, all those things can feel like they're happening more and more often. I know they are for me. But that is a place where we numb out our aliveness. And also fear of vulnerability, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of things being taken away keeps us from fully engaging in our life and feeling alive. Shifting gears, good news again. How can we be open to feeling alive more? First and foremost, figure out and follow what lights you up, even if it makes no sense. When I left my marriage 2 years ago, I decided that I journaled about it too. And I decided that I was going to say yes to anything. This might make me cry. To anything that felt like it was calling out to my soul. And I knew that these were going to be things that scared me. I knew that these might be things that confused me, that didn't make any sense even. But I knew that I wanted to look at it as if my life, source, divine love was throwing me a life raft at a time in my life where I felt like I was drowning. I love metaphors. You guys know this. That was the metaphor I kind of clung on to, no pun intended. That was a yes. I wanted to say yes to that life raft. And that's what I did. And that's what got me through an incredibly dark year. But that's how I flexed the muscle of leaning into feeling alive. Another way to do it is to reconnect with your childlike wonder, creativity, play. When was the last time any of us played? I mean, even like pickleball. Yes, that's playing. You were literally playing a game. More of that. Do more of that. Creativity, whatever that creativity looks like for you. Curiosity. I always say curiosity over control. That is childlike wonder. That's being open to feeling alive. Feeling alive also can be moved along and helped when we are focusing on being in our body more instead of our head. I know it's scary for me too, but hear me out. When we engage in movement, dance, or even somatic therapy with a therapist, breath work, sensation awareness, that is connecting to your body, because our soul typically likes to talk to us that way, energetically through our body. That will help you connect to feeling more alive. And saying yes to experiences that stretch you out of your comfort zone. That's another way to be open to feeling alive. And then the last one of the three things we're all searching for is what I like to call completion, but it's also can be called wholeness. I do feel like this is the thing that we're looking for when we are searching for a partner. It's this, we want to feel complete. And we've been taught that we can find that in a partner. That's usually like kind of the primary thing that I think culturally and socially we're pointed to that will give us that will fulfill that. It's not explicitly said, maybe in some circles it is, but implicitly for sure, we are taught that we can find that in having children or a certain job or reaching really any goal outside of us will give us that feeling of wholeness. It will give us that feeling of completion. And I certainly thought that. I certainly thought that a partner, that ultimately marriage, a monogamous relationship was going to be the thing that was going to make me feel complete, that was going to make me feel whole. And let me tell you what, that was a recipe for disaster because I relied on someone else for that. What a job to put on someone. I don't want to fill out that job application. No, thank you. No, thank you. I want someone else to be in charge of that for themselves. And so here we are. So what wholeness, what completion really is. So it's realizing that you were never incomplete. You were never broken in the first place. What a thought, like what if when we're kids and growing up, we believed that we were never broken, ever, that there was never anything wrong with us, that there was never anything that we needed to fill. So it's coming to that realization, like integrating that belief. Coming to a place of wholeness and completion is, I believe it's integrating all the parts and versions of you. So this is, remember I said a while back, different dimensions, and we might encounter some people in our lives who only like one dimension of us. When that happens, like we start to do that to ourselves too, and we reject sides of us. I mean, this is a lot of Brene Brown's work too, that, she's talking about quote unquote, our story. She's saying that we cut off our own stories. And what she means by that is like, yes, sometimes she's talking about an actual story, circumstances that happened, but it's also like parts of you. We cut those off because we think that we cannot show them because we're ashamed of them in fear that people will reject us, people won't love us, people won't accept that story of us, that version of us. So coming to a place of wholeness and completion is about integrating, accepting, and hopefully loving all of the parts of you, all the versions of you, the light parts, the shadow parts, the past parts, the present parts. This is one of the most difficult things to do. I also knew that if I was ever going to enter a relationship again, that was something I needed to do. I cannot expect someone else to accept and love all the versions of me if I'm not. It became much more important for me to do that for myself than it was for a partner. I knew that it would be more meaningful to me. I would get more out of doing that for myself than I would if somebody else did it. And I had never experienced that really before, as someone accepting and loving all of me. That is coming to a place of wholeness and completion. Wholeness and completion is also a deep inner knowing that you are enough as you are. You don't need to add anything else. You don't need to subtract anything else. You are amazing, perfect, phenomenal, all of the things as you are. And this is such a big topic. My God, have I had episodes about this? And I also think it's in WHIP. It's a work in progress. It's also in WHIP. Wholeness is also about feeling, and this is slightly different than what I just described, but it's feeling at peace with yourself and your life. I'm going to say a little bit more about it, but in 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, I wrote it, the very last chapter is, no, this is exactly where you need to be. And in that chapter, I talk about how, and the reason that I wrote this is even back then, and I had only been in the self-help space for a handful of years at that point, what I was already seeing was that there were a lot of my clients and the women in my community were waiting to like truly accept all of themselves when they got to, pointing over there, when they healed themselves, when they worked on X, Y, and Z issue. And that chapter is like, you are exactly where you need to be. Sometimes where exactly you need to be is standing still, not evolving, not learning about yourself. It's just standing still because you are integrating when that is happening, but you don't need to be constantly moving towards something else. Okay, so a little more about feeling at peace with yourself and your life. When we're at that place, when we're not feeling at peace with ourselves and our life, what can help is like, it's about knowing that most things can be a life lesson. Circumstances don't have to mean anything about you, that the circumstances are real. The circumstances are happening, but it doesn't mean anything about you as a human. It doesn't mean anything about your worth. That's the separation that can be helpful. All right, now I'm going to talk about how we resist feeling whole, feeling complete. Where that shows up, where the resistance shows up to that is, as I mentioned before, buying into the belief that someone else's job, that someone else can do that for us, someone else or something else will make us feel complete, will make us feel whole. And also believing that we have to achieve more before we can feel complete and before we can feel whole. That's basically thinking that there is something outside of us, putting that power into someone or something else. We resist the feeling of completion, the feeling of wholeness by holding on to past regrets, holding on to past resentments. If someone would have behaved differently, if I would have had a different kind of childhood, if my ex would have done this, I could get to that place. Holding on to past shame instead of working to release it. Again, that's giving something or someone else our power. We resist wholeness by the belief that healing means erasing or forgetting or even forgiving the past. I'm at a place now where I'm like, I don't think we need to forgive to heal. It may or may not come, but I don't think that that's a completely necessary thing in terms of healing. But when we believe that our healing is that a requirement of healing is forgetting, erasing the past, rather than integrating it, rather than accepting it. Like if you kind of look at it as like, fold in the cheese, David. I don't know how to fold in the cheese. If you're a Schitt's Creek fan, you know that scene. But if we look at these difficult things that have happened in our life, our traumas, hard circumstances, memories that are impacting us, if we look at it as like shredded cheese and folding it into our life instead of not putting it in the recipe at all, if we work on integrating it and accepting it as part of who we are, that is a way to feel whole and complete. But when we don't do that, when we reject those parts of us, that is resisting completion. That is resisting wholeness. Okay, we need to take one last ad break. When we get back, I'm going to talk about how to be more open to wholeness and completion, and then that'll wrap it up. So we'll be right back.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does without me lifting a finger, so I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Hear that? It's SpringFest savings calling your name, only at Lowe's. Right now, get a free Select Ego 56-volt battery when you buy a Select Ego trimmer, blower, or mower. Plus, get your choice of any 2 bags of Miracle-Gro organic soil mix for only $16. Shop these can't-miss deals in-store or online today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/2. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Excludes Hawaii.
All right, we are back, my loves. So the last thing I want to talk about, so we are on part 3 around all the things that we're searching for, feeling free, feeling alive, feeling whole and complete. And we're towards the end of my riff about completion and wholeness, how to be open to that. Y'all, self-compassion. Self-compassion as a daily practice, giving yourself grace. And I want to say this. I first learned about the practice of self-compassion when I first learned about inner critic work, self-talk work. If you've known me for most of my career, you know that in the beginning of my practice, when I was yourkickasslife.com, one of the first things that I taught was programs and classes, group coaching, specifically around the inner critic and healing and managing our negative self-talk, because we cannot get rid of it. We can only manage it. Really, the main focus, the main remedy, solution, if you will, is self-compassion. And so it was one of the very first things I learned about in my coaching school. When I started my coaching school in 2007, took me a minute to graduate in 2010. And that blew my mind. And I say all that to tell you that this particular practice has been sort of the longest one that I have embraced and been consistently working on. I don't even recognize the version of myself that I was in the beginning in terms of my self-talk, in terms of my level of self-compassion. I had none. I had little to no self-compassion before I started working on it. When was that? 15 plus years ago. I am a changed woman. My life is so much better. I feel so much better. I am able to connect with other people on such a bigger scale now because of the compassion I have for myself. It's given me the ability to have compassion and understanding and patience for other people. Am I perfect? No, not by a long stretch. And it's also allowed me to tolerate less of certain things in my life, certain people in my life, because I have more compassion for myself. It's opened my eyes to behaviors and personalities of other people that are unacceptable to me. And it's not that they specifically lack self-compassion. It's just that I have met myself where I'm at. I have given myself more understanding and grace so that I can say, hey, you know what isn't good for you? That relationship, that thing, that whatever, that XYZ, it can be life-changing. So I'm an evangelist, clearly, for having self-compassion be a daily practice. I used to think that self-compassion would make me weak. How am I supposed to get to all of my goals if I'm compassionate with myself? Are you kidding? I am Generation X. We are the pick yourself up by your bootstraps generation. We are get yourself up and dust yourself off. Do not cry about it. That generation. And I have learned that self-compassion will get you to your goals, get you to a better life, get you to feeling alive, feeling free, feeling whole and complete. If it's a daily practice. All right. Thank you for listening to me as I got up on my soapbox about that. Also, how to be open to feeling whole and feeling complete is doing shadow work. Oof. Embracing the parts of you that feel unworthy. Embracing the parts of you that are resistant to self-compassion. Embracing the parts of you that are resistant to having patience, understanding, and compassion for other people. We all have dark sides. The mean girl streak in me, she goes hard. She goes hard. And I am meaner to no one else except myself. I'm the meanest. I can be the meanest to myself. And I have learned to love her because that is what she needs more than anything. The shadow parts of us are hurting, are scared, are in dark places. That's why we call it shadows. And more than anything, they need patience, love, and understanding, compassion. So it's doing that shadow work will make you feel more complete. Also, and this is one that I was like, oh, I never realized that in the beginning. Rituals and reflection. So I don't know about you. I have kept old journals, not all of them, but many of them. There's some that I wish that I still had. I was just telling Dr. Fox that I used to, when I was in my first marriage, there was a lot of rage on my end. And I used to journal in all caps. There was a few instances where I would journal in all caps in really big letters, and I would write so hard with the pen, it would go through the page. And I remember one time, it was the second time that I left him right before I got married to my first husband. And I wrote myself a letter. And because I had done this in a job, remember that job I just told you about where I worked at the buying office? When I left that job, because it was a horrible job, I wrote before I gave my notice, because I knew that they were going to try to talk me into not leaving, I wrote myself a letter and I said, if I ever think about staying at this job, read this. And it was a letter to myself saying like, here are all the reasons it sucks here. Here are all the reasons I hate my life because of this job. Here are all the things that this job is doing to my soul and my spirit. And so it was years later. So that job was when I was 22. And then the second time I left my first husband, he was my boyfriend then, I was 25. So I was still a wee girl. And I wrote myself a letter right before I left him for the second time. We were living together at that point. And the letter started, if I ever think about coming back, read this. I wish I still had those. I wish I still had those journals. I wish I still had that letter. I threw them away because I did end up going back. He proposed not long after that. We got married. And then a few years later, that relationship completely exploded. And the reason I wish I still had those is, and I'm glad that I remember it because I really love, it is helpful to me in my evolution, in my journey, specifically around feeling whole and complete, to look at how far I've come, to be able to literally read about these past versions of myself, where I was at, what emotions I was going through, where I was stuck, where I was struggling. For one, so I can see like, oh, I end up in those same places. I end up in very similar places. And look how different it is now. So for me, it's like, look how much easier it is for me to bounce back. Look at the resilience that I have now. Look at how much I've grown. And so it can help us come to that place of feeling complete and feeling like we are our own safety net when you can reflect and look at how far you've gone and honoring your journey as a sacred transformation, because it is. And if you can do rituals, whether this is, I'm recording this and spring equinox just happened, whether you do it during all the 4 season changes or in the new year or your birthday, whether it's a milestone birthday or not, having a ritual I think that we as humans, this is just a human thing that our brains like, that our bodies and souls tend to like. I mean, we see rituals in every organized religion, in the vast majority of cultures, there are rituals. And I think that that can be so helpful to honor your journey as sacred. So other ways to be open to the feeling of completion and wholeness are trusting that you are already whole. And this is a whole conversation in and of itself, right? Trusting that you are already whole. Just hold that thought in your mind. What does that come? What comes up for you? And also trusting in your resilience. This is what I talk about when I say knowing that you are your own safety net. One of the biggest things that I talk about if I'm talking about self-confidence, I work with a lot of women in leadership, with a lot of executives. Confidence comes up sometimes. Self-confidence comes up. All of these leaders who are women have self-confidence, but they struggle with it sometimes. And it might be in like particular areas of their life or in particular situations. And so here's what I say when I talk about self-confidence. And I'm going to whip through it. Self-confidence, you don't get it before you do the thing. You get it on the other side. You have to have just a little bit of courage in order to push yourself through to do the thing, whatever it is. And then on the other side, you gain confidence. However, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you fall flat on your fucking face. Sometimes you do that vulnerable thing. You get that little bit of courage and you go out there and you do it and you get your ass handed to you. Sometimes you get the emotional shit kicked out of you in the process. The mental and emotional shit kicked out of you. That has happened to me. The upside of that is that you learn resilience. That is your takeaway, that you are your own safety net. I have realized this, like my kids are teenagers now. They're 17 and 15. And so I'm starting to think more about life lessons as I'm given the opportunity as a parent to swoop in and save one of them. And I pause and I'm like, okay, I could save them from this. I could make this all better for them. Or I could set a boundary, or I could allow them to make the mistake. I could allow them to have the consequence that's going to happen if I don't save them, so that they can learn that they're not going to die from it, learn how to get back up, learn that they are their own safety net at the end of the day. Because our brains, our nervous system tell us like, this might kill us, like this might be the end of the world. And it's not helpful for me if I just come in and save them all the time. So they don't know what that consequence feels like. They don't know what being their own safety net feels like. That's a disservice from me. And so when we can look back on our lives, because I know all y'all are adults listening to this, and we can look back on our lives at the times where we have gotten that little bit of courage and done the thing and fallen on our face. You lived. It may have sucked, but you are resilient. I wish that it would have worked out for you. Ideally, of course. And this is also a life lesson in resilience. And so it's like when you can, because our nervous systems are sneaky bastards. This is what stops us, is they're trying to keep us safe. But when you can truly work on self-trust, leaning into that, trusting that you are so resilient, you have experience that will be your safety net. You can trust your own spirit. You can trust your own soul. That can be extraordinarily helpful in feeling complete, feeling whole. So that's all I have for you today. This went longer than I actually thought it would. So thank you for staying with me. To close it up, freedom, aliveness, wholeness, completion aren't out there from someone else or something else. They are all within you. These are the three main things that I believe that we are after. So when we can name them, that's why I wanted to make this podcast episode. When we can name them, we can talk about them out in the open, you have a bit more of a North Star. My job over here in the work that I do for you, my podcast, is I want to name the things whether it's the feelings and emotions, whether it's the journeys, the circumstances, the stories, whatever. So we have a map. I'm obsessed with unpacking things and like asking, like, what does that actually look like in real life? That is a really cute sentiment to feel free, feel alive, feel complete. Well, what the fuck does that mean? It's not enough for me to just like read it on a meme. Tell me what that looks like in real life. So that's my hope for all of my podcast episodes, especially these 10 that I'm doing for you. They're not out there. They're inside of you. These are inner journeys. No one can do them for you. These are choices that you make every day. These are explorations that you make every day. Observations, behaviors, beliefs, thoughts, every day. There's an invitation, AndreaOwen.com/667. Download the worksheet. Do this work for yourself. Start integrating, start getting curious, start to see where do you need more of any of these things that I've talked about. And don't forget, AndreaOwen.com/habits, how to stop feeling like shit. How to stop feeling like shit. I've said enough words. How to stop feeling like shit group coaching program is coming up. This is a great, moderately priced way to work with me this year. And also, there is a private one-on-one deep dive offer that I'm going to have next week for you that is in direct correlation, that has curriculum that is all about these 10 episodes that I'm bringing you right before my 50th birthday. Some final words. You are allowed to claim these things now. You're allowed to claim these things now. You don't have to wait. It doesn't have to be later. And by you listening to this podcast, by you being curious of what these things look like in your life, by you having patience and compassion, just the curiosity, doing the worksheet, sharing this with friends, that is doing the work. That is doing the work. And don't you ever forget, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I would be so incredibly grateful if you haven't done so already, if you could leave a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Super easy if you already listen to your shows over there. But if you don't, or maybe you have the app on your phone, but you listen to this show on a different app, if you could leave a review for this show, it matters so much. I wish I could express how much it matters. I also wish that it didn't matter so much, but alas, it does. So if you haven't already, please go review and rate the show. It would mean so much to me. And thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.